Hi everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Startup Playbook podcast. My name is Rohit Bhargava, and each week I interview successful founders, investors, and subject matter experts on how they got started, the strategies they use to succeed, and advice that they have to current and future entrepreneurs. In this episode, I interview Alex McBride, the founder of The Fifth Watches, a brand that has a really unique business model and one that has absolutely dominated social media, gaining a following of over 500,000 followers across their social media platforms since launching just over 18 months ago. In this interview, Alex shares how he built a business from a blog, how they turned what could have been a critical weakness into their greatest strength, the power of social media influencers, and how to engage and grow an audience over social media. Hope you enjoy my conversation with Alex. Hi Alex, welcome to the Startup Playbook podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thanks for having me in your office. It's a great space that you've got here.
Well, it's good to start showing people what we're doing here. So yeah, we've invested into kind of getting the space set up right and functioning in a way that kind of supports our business. So it's good to kind of get people in and share that with them also. So yeah, thanks for coming down.
Not a problem. I can definitely see the architectural and design side of your background coming through with this space as well. So on that, one of the things that kind of came up from one of our previous discussions was that your first job was actually as your parents' boss.
Yeah,
which is very. Can you sort of explain that a little bit further for our listeners?
Sure. It was being my parents' boss. So I straight out of uni, I got to ask my parents whatever I wanted for dinner. I just kind of said, "This is what I want for dinner," and they did it because I was their boss. So no, it's I studied property. Both my parents are architects and have a quite an established architecture firm in Melbourne, and they've got quite an out there style, and I had a lot of respect growing up for what they did, but I never saw myself as quite being right to kind of follow their footsteps in architecture. I like to take a lot more risks. I like to push boundaries. I like to do things a little bit differently and move really quickly. And I saw that kind of putting me somewhere where I could work with them on design. I was very interested in design, and that was a big part of my life growing up. So I went into property. I then got a job at a property development company, and my parents were the architects for my first job there. So it was a really good process working with them. I think I really understood where they came from, and I think it's a hard thing to try and get in the head of a designer, and I felt like I could really bring that to the table, and that was an awesome process to kind of have a huge amount of respect for what they did and the effort they put into their work, and then to try and make that into a project. We were doing high-rise residential development, and making that a kind of a profitable project, and do some projects up to like 630 apartment developments I worked on them with. Another one was 120 apartment development, and it was just really, really fun to kind of bring their creative vision to life on these projects, and it was a good stepping stone for sure.
Sure. So although you didn't want to necessarily follow in your parents' footsteps with their career path, you mentioned that the design was something that you were very passionate about, and that's also the very early stages of the genesis of what is now the Fifth Watches. You mentioned that you sort of started off with a blog.
Sure.
Can you kind of again talk about what that blog was about and how that all got started and how that then turned into the Fifth?
Definitely. So I guess I worked in that job, in that corporate role for about 4 years, and I got to a stage where I just wasn't able to do as much as I'd like to. I wanted to kind of have more of an impact than what I currently was having, and I looked at ways I could just have that outlet. I'm someone who, if I find something and I really like that thing I'm doing, I will do it 24 hours. So I wanted a passion project that I could come home to at night and I could just work on all night. And so I started a blog to kind of communicate the value in architecture and in design. I wanted it to become a type of authority in design and kind of showcase people who are doing things a little bit differently and people who are kind of pushing the boundaries and kind of showcase their work and how that creates value, and how people experience value, because I think that's an important thing. It's very much in our society we're like 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, how many square meters is it? There's no real value put on kind of how does that space make you feel? How do you interact with people in that space? And I wanted to try and shift the focus onto that a little bit more, and that was a real passion for me, to try and just communicate that understanding of the importance of creating these great spaces.
Sure. So just on that, so there wasn't a business context to that at all. It was just something that you were passionate in, that you liked doing, and that you just wanted to spend time towards.
That's right. Yeah. So it was it was purely a passion project at night time. The further I got into it, I then saw it as something that I could potentially sell products on, and I started to brainstorm ideas. I went to friends who in kind of e-commerce, and I got their advice. I looked at what a lot of people were doing, and that's funnily enough, that's where I met my business partner, Greta. So her and I met, and we just had straight away we hit it off. We had a lot of respect for each other and what we were both doing, and then she tried to help me start to sell products off that website. It wasn't going to be the website's products. It was going to be other products that kind of fit in line with what the message was that I was trying to get across.
So what sort of products were they, just out of
curiosity? So there was some notebooks, there was some watches, there was some stationery and stuff like that. Just smaller products that I could kind of get off the ground with not too much money and too much time that I had at that point in time. So I tried that for a little bit, and I ended up kind of just focusing on one of those products. I always kind of I used to wear my grandfather's tag around, and that meant a lot to me. It was I saw my grandfather kind of build a business and kind of just pass away before he was able to really enjoy kind of what he had built, and just when it kind of became successful. So for me, wearing that watch around was kind of like a reminder to me to make the most of what I have, and to really kind of hustle and while I'm young. So I honed in on that product. We then actually decided it was easier to use a product to then tell a message than it was to push a message and then push products that kind of fit that message. And that was a call. Greta and I kind of looked at both scenarios, and we said let's go with the product with the message to follow that product. So I kind of set out on finding the right manufacturer, working with the right designer, and just putting the structures in place to get that into action. So that was kind of how the fifth was born. It was really born out of a passion project, and it turned into a watch brand, which is now turning into a lifestyle brand, which who knows what it will be in 6 months' time. But it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of how it all started.
Sure. So one of the things that you mentioned there was it was a lot easier for you to create a message behind a brand than to push out a message and then have brands kind of layering on top of that. Sure. So when you were going to the manufacturers and trying to get this up and running with a clear idea that you wanted to focus on watches, did you have a clear idea then of your product in mind? Or so what was it that you were looking for to kind of fit the business? Did you have a clear brand and a messaging that you then wanted to create in a product, which would then sort of help you to empower that messaging a little bit more? Or
sure.
What came first?
Sure. Well, the message was still very much the same, and as we were trying to push in the blog, but it was just pushing that in a different way, and that was from a product standpoint. So our it's a funny thing with the way that our brand has evolved. It's become, I guess, more true to who it originally was at the very start. As we've kind of grown, it's it might look like we've taken a few different turns and stuff, but it really feels like it's just an unraveling of what it is that we stand for and what our vision kind of is. And when we first kind of came at it with the product angle, we had an idea to collaborate with designers from all around the world and produce new watches all the time with different designers, and it was really it was creating a product and a platform on which to do that, and that was very clear in our early vision, and it was kind of awkwardly written all over our website in our about section and stuff like that. But and then as we evolved, we kind of peeled back the layers on what was practical, what we could do, how we could do it, and kind of jumping back into that stuff with a bit more of a insightful look on the whole thing, and how that evolves. But at the start, we really didn't know really what we were doing. We were just kind of doing what we thought was right, and kind of following our kind of tail on it. Really, we're just kind of just kind of running around and trying to get it all into plan. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously finding the right manufacturers, especially the first time around, is really difficult.
Yes.
Looking back, do you have any sort of advice that you would give to someone who is trying to create products for the first time and is sort of looking to find the right manufacturer or the right producer for their products?
For sure. I mean, there are, it's going to be difficult whenever somebody starts a business to find the right manufacturer. And it wasn't easy for us at the start. We had to change manufacturers. I've also had another business where we've had to change manufacturers twice, and it is difficult to manage the quality, the relationships. But I mean, my advice on it would be to really try and nurture the relationship as much as possible with any supplier or manufacturer. It's important that they buy into your brand, they buy into your vision. We've actually had our manufacturer down with us for the last week, working out of our office, and he, funnily enough, he wants to set up an office inside our office, which I don't know how I feel about that, but he's just getting those relationships working really well is important. And there's it depends who you're dealing with, where your manufacturers are, but there might be cultural differences, and just being respectful of those and being aware of those, that just the way you're interacting with people or talking with people. But I think the more you can get the manufacturer to buy into you and buy into your vision and your product, the better off you are from the start, for sure.
Sure. So you have this idea for selling watches online. you have now hopefully found a manufacturer that you think will be great and will work out. What's the next step in the business and getting that off the ground?
Sure. The next step and the step that could come well before the manufacturer is building an audience. Anybody who's starting a business or thinking of starting a business, my advice would be start building your audience. You can never start too early. It kind of leads into another point, which is nurturing your leads and being able to grow sustainable growth on social media, and you really do need to nurture those leads. So it's offering them content that aligns with your brand. It's not necessarily just popular content, but it needs to align with what you're about. And people need to get that and identify with that. When we first started, we were fascinated with the obsession of flat lays and these kind of, these photos from above that everybody seemed to be doing. So we actually started to build an audience called the Fifth View, and it was all about the view from above. And we built, a following of roughly 50,000 followers of people who just like flat lays, and from there we were able to subtly introduce a product, and then still keeping it in line with that view from above, and that kind of notion of just looking down at your watch, and we're able to subtly transition that audience to being a watch audience. But it is very important that you do start building an awareness early, because without that, audience to push something to, your message won't get heard. And I experienced that with my blog, that I just didn't have the audience, so I tried to leverage other audiences through other people's products, and that was a tough gig in itself. So the earlier people can start building an audience and awareness for their brand and their product, the better off they are, for sure.
Sure. And so I know with a lot of early stage startup founders or designers, one of the big reasons why they don't build that audience up first is because they think that they don't have the products in place, or they don't have everything lined up perfectly to then be able to push out to people. Sure. What's your recommendation? I mean, and what are some of the things that you use to help grow an audience of 50,000 people with just flat lay views?
Yeah, I mean, it was with that we were. I mean, there's a huge amount of luck in it. People just really were able to engage with this concept of the fifth view being a view from above, and we were able to build an audience on that, which was great. That just seemed to happen. We had some other accounts that were more inspiration based, just purely Instagram accounts, and we were able to kind of push followers across to this account by explaining the fifth view on the other accounts, and people just seemed to kind of just get it, and they came to this page and it was all pictures of the view from above, and they just got it. But curating that content is definitely important in kind of in making sure somebody's on board with your brand and what you're about. There's a number of tools you can use to source content, but otherwise probably everybody's guilty of this, spending hours and hours of trying to find the right content for your page. But it is serving the right content, and there is tools like Pinterest, and there's a few other tools, curating tools, where you can get heaps of awesome content that is in line with your brand. Another thing we did to build our audience was competitions. They're a great way to start, but again, when you think of building a sustainable following and social media growth, you need to make sure that any competitions you do are totally in line with your brand and your message. Otherwise, if you're giving away a MacBook or an iPad or a hoverboard or something like that, people will sign up and they will engage with you and they'll follow because they want a Mac, they don't want your product. And I've fallen into this trap with another business of mine. We were able to build a list of 16,000 email subscribers before we even started the business, and we thought we were home and hosed. But these people weren't interested in our product; they were interested in the GoPro we were giving away, and you know, and that's a lesson that is a really good one, I think, for me especially, is just making sure that anything you do to engage an audience needs to be in line with your brand and your message and what you're about, and I think that's an important factor in growing sustainable kind of social media following.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially I think when it comes to social media, people are very drawn by the vanity metrics of, you know, how many likes they have, how many followers they have, and those sort of things. But the real, as you mentioned, the more sustainable aspect of that is how engaged are the actual audience of people that are following you, that are liking your photos, that are subscribing to your website as well. I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the fifth view that you had.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously at that time it was probably one of the fewer Instagram accounts that was doing or focusing purely on that. How important was that sort of point of difference? As you mentioned, sort of things were starting to take off then.
Yeah.
How important was that to then be able to draw that audience for you? And how important was the consistency of that branding message as well in growing that audience?
Yeah, I mean, it was extremely important, and I don't know how we managed to do everything right from the very start with that, because it was we really had a concept that people could engage with and people could understand, and if you got to that page, you knew exactly what it was about from the get-go. You could engage with that content. You knew what it was about, and it was about kind of beautiful pictures of the view from above. So sticking a watch in there and a nice looking watch is not too foreign for those kind of people looking for nice imagery and that view from above, and that having something that people can understand is very important, and having that kind of unique point of difference is also very important. It's difficult, and especially nowadays there's a lot of stuff out there, and maybe when we started, things like tools like Instagram weren't as prevalent as they are now, and you know, it is more difficult now to try and find your point of difference, but there's more need to as well. So it's so important to have something that people can understand and buy into immediately, and that really has a bit of a point of difference to everything else they're kind of viewing on the internet or on social media. So it's definitely up there for sure.
So how do you, obviously with watches now, it's becoming such a popular and saturated market. How do you kind of stay ahead of the competition and the newer players that are emerging, or the more existing players that are there?
For sure. That's it's a good question. One thing we're focusing on is really developing kind of our brand message and really making sure we're communicating that clearly and consistently. One thing for businesses who are, who are at an age of a similar age to ours is and might have had success, might not, but that keeping that consistency across the brand is so important. You need to make sure that everything you're doing, whether it's talking to somebody on Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram, or advertising or anything like that, you need to make sure that you're talking a consistent language, and again, that people can get it. If people get a little bit confused with what you're doing or don't quite understand, I feel like they'll turn away. They don't get it, so they don't try to get it. It's difficult. There's so much stuff out there there's so many people doing things right that doing things not quite right doesn't really work. So just the best brands that I've kind of looked into definitely hit that consistency mark all the time, and it's one thing that we are really focusing on a business that if we can tighten up our what we're about and make sure that flows through everything that we do, that we're not constrained by competitors, we're not constrained by ourselves, we're not constrained by our offering. We can do other things. We can collaborate with an artist, but as long as that's in line with our tone of voice and our kind of messaging and what we're about, then that will be fine. So that's where we're trying to focus, is just instead of looking externally, more just what can we do internally. We have all the elements there. It's just about doing them better, making sure they're really understandable, and that's an important factor for us at the moment, especially.
So one of the things that you mentioned was keeping consistency with the branding, but I'm curious to know whether your brand messaging and your tone of voice has evolved over time, or whether it's the exact same sort of messaging that you had from day one as you do now, and if it has changed, what were some of what caused you to kind of change that to what it is now?
For sure, that's a good question, and it's an important one. It's when we started, I'd never done this before, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So from the get-go, when we launched our business, we had kind of amazing success, and we were able to do about $100,000 in our first ever day of business, and that's kind of feels ridiculous and a little bit unheard of for a business with no kind of brand equity or anything like that, just to launch out of nowhere and do that. So we did a lot right from the start, and we kind of felt like, well, I definitely felt for the first 6 months like I was just trying to keep up with it all, and I didn't really know what tone of voice was. I didn't know the importance of tone of voice. I didn't really know the importance of branding. I really didn't know anything, but I was just trying to keep up with it all. And we're extremely lucky that we had an audience that just really engaged with our brand from the get-go. Over the past kind of 18 months, it's really been kind of an evolution of that tone of voice and of that branding that fits with inside our vision. So our vision has never changed, and our passion for doing what we do has never changed. It's more just a understanding of how that's communicated, and the importance of communicating that in the right ways that has changed. So we've recently changed from being the Fifth Watches to being the Fifth.co, and that change is just to reflect that we don't see ourselves being constrained to a watch brand. We see ourselves kind of jumping into a number of different areas, whether it's collaborating with an artist, whether it's collaborating with a designer on a new product or new accessory. We see it going in many different directions, but the vision has always held it together, and the passion for that has always held it together. But it has kind of just evolved as we've kind of understood who we are, what we're about, why we're doing what we're doing, because we never got a chance to kind of do that from the start. We were just following our passion, and we were just extremely lucky with the way things kind of evolved that way.
Yeah, and I mean, getting 100,000 sales on the first day is extremely rare. What were some of the, if you can remember, what are some of the strategies that you used to kind of drive awareness? As you said, you had an engaged audience beforehand.
Sure.
But how do you get additional people on top of that to then buy your product on
Definitely.
day one?
Yeah, we had from day one we had an influencer marketing strategy. We started the business with like less than $5,000. I invested a bunch of money in getting 50 of our first samples from the supplier, and he kind of couldn't work out. He's like, why don't I just do one sample for you? That'll be fine. And I'm like, no, I want 50. And that was partly me being impatient and wanting to go very fast because it felt right. And we got 50 of the first samples, and we were able to give those out to people we knew within our network who maybe had an Instagram following, and we were like, these are samples, they probably don't work, but we want you to just take a photo with them, because
no videos.
No videos. Just photos. So we were able to turn those. We had about 30 influencers from the start, and we were able to turn those influencers into kind of really strong brand ambassadors. We again, the same with the manufacturer and the same with influencers. It is all relationships, and I think that's an important factor in it all. Is that we're all in the business of people, and we're able to develop these relationships so that they were such good brand ambassadors. Some of them are still our ambassadors today. They just spoke so highly of our brand, so highly of what we're about, and having them really engage with our brand, and them talking to their followers like that, just worked wonders for our business at the very start. They posted some photos before we launched, so we were able to kind of social proof ourselves with that influencer strategy, and then we were able to launch and achieve amazing results in the first day of business. But yeah.
On the influencer side, was there a particular strategy that you used to find the 30? So were you looking for people with certain levels of following or certain amounts of engagement, or were in a particular location, or you thought fit a particular demographic? For
sure. I mean, from the get-go, we were always very focused on content, and it wasn't necessarily getting the biggest influencer or the one with the most following. It was getting someone who was a genuine person, who was, who came across that way, and whose followers engaged with them in that way. And having that more authentic kind of brand ambassador really helped the brand from the start. And that was a big focus for us, is not the biggest following, but maybe the best content. People who really do things right and produce the right content. And I mean, still to this day, we will go to brand ambassadors who might only have 100 followers, but they might be insanely good at what they do. And we know if we start to promote them, their 100 will turn into 100,000 pretty quickly, and they will be able to recognise that relationship. And we've got a few people we've worked with. One that springs to mind is Lychee Pan. When we started working with her, her Instagram account was on 35,000 followers. We promoted her quite heavily, and people really engaged with her content, and we were able to help her reach new audiences, and from that, her account has just grown exponentially to I think now she's over 400,000.
Wow.
Which is just insane. But it's she'll still post for us for free, which is awesome, because she recognises that relationship, and that's been a big focus for us. Is not so much focusing on we need 10 influencers who have a following over 100,000. It's okay, but what are their followers like? Do they really engage with them? What's their content like? And that's the way we kind of like to approach our influencers, and it's been really positive for our business to date, for sure.
And another big aspect of that was the relationship building. A lot of businesses tend to focus purely on what they're getting out of that relationship, but from the sounds of it, you've actively helped take people without a huge following, and without expecting too much back in return straight away. Really sort of given back to them and help them grow, which it's in the long run, it's kind of saving you a lot of money as well.
For sure.
If you're trying to reach out to someone with 400,000 followers, I assume that costs a fair bit of money these days. So
it definitely does.
So is there obviously with your business, one of the bigger things that I see from your branding message is the family aspect. So the family being the community of followers that follow the brand, but also the people that work at the Fifth. So can you talk to me a little bit behind the scenes about who's involved with the team and how they came on board?
Yeah, not a problem. The Fifth Fam is kind of a way we call our audience. But it is also our team as well. It quite literally is a family. It's in our office here. I've got two cousins. I've got my brother who's our operations manager and kind of runs the show, tells me what I need to do, and we've got a number of best friends as well in the office, and it really feels like a family vibe, and it ties into the way we interact in our office, the way we interact with our influencers. A big something that's very important to me is family. And from working with my parents straight away out of school, out of uni, to now sitting side by side with my brother, it is a very important factor to me. And I love the people we're working with and what we're doing together. And I think that kind of collaborative approach is so powerful. And it's the way we like to kind of work with our influencers as well. Is we try and listen to them. We get inspiration from them. They're not just pushing our product for the sake of us getting some sales. We can actually learn a lot from these people, and we'll go out and create content with them and learn some photography skills or something like that. And it is family is definitely at the core of our business, and it's something we try and push from a branding point of view as well. We want our audience to feel part of the family, and we want them to be treated as family. Send them a happy birthday when it's their birthday. Listen to them if they need listening to. Support them if they need supporting. And this is the kind of new direction is kind of working out some of these factors that are literally at the core of our business. When we started, it was literally myself, my brother, and my cousin in there, and so it did really start as a family. So developing that tone of voice and the way we kind of interact with our customers has been just a kind of an extension of where we were at the start, but it's actually us just identifying that as being kind of a core value to us.
It seems like a really big point of difference specifically on Instagram or in the industry that you play in, which is more the watcher space, which tends to be very cold, very much on the high end focus. So kind of peeling that back and focusing on family and the tone of voice that you guys use, I think is something that resonates with a lot of people. Speaking of point of difference, something that we haven't touched on is the unique business model that you guys have.
Sure.
In the space. So for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the way that the Fifth Watches operates, can you share a little bit about how the model works?
Sure. Well, essentially we only sell our products for 5 days of every month, which is from the 5th till the 9th. And the rest of the month we spend kind of collaborating, interacting, and doing stuff a little bit more with our audience and our influencers. The way that kind of came about was when we launched our business. Actually, if I step one step back, one of the biggest lessons I've had in this is as marketers and as never doing marketing before. It was a lesson that kind of really stuck with me, that as marketers we need to be positive about situations and and we've got to see solutions. One of those things is turning any potential negative into a positive, and that's thinking on your feet. That's working with the flow of everything and trying to work out a way forward. And when we launched our business, we did a crazy amount of sales on day one, and we actually sold out of all our product. And I kind of looked at my business partner, and her and I said, "Oh, should we just call it today, and then should we come back in stock when we have stock? What should we do?" From there, we decided, rather than going in and out of stock all the time, we wanted to be honest with our customers and say, "Hey, save up for the next month. Our products will be back on the 5th of Feb, or 5th of Jan, or 5th of December," and we just wanted to be honest. And then we decided we do everything in 5, so why don't we only sell for 5 days as well? So from there, it was really kind of working with a problem of selling out of stock and not knowing really what to do, to kind of controlling that situation and going, okay, let's be honest with our customers. We're gonna come back the 5th of next month, and then the 5th of the month after that, and we'll always have stock, and you can rely on us having stock at that particular time. But yeah, and the way that's kind of evolved is very much an extension of our brand message as well, and that is when somebody wears our watch, we want that watch to act as a physical reminder to make the most of every moment. We really want to inspire people to get more out of life, and that's our approach internally. And we hope that our customers, every time they look at their 5th watch, they feel that as well. And that kind of plays into that model a little bit, which was a funny way that the 5th evolved, in that if you miss out on a 5th timepiece, it was only because you didn't make the time to get it that month. So it just reinforces that point to make the most of every moment. Which was kind of a nice thing to discover a little bit down the track after we had implemented this model. So it is, we do want our watches to be special to people, and we want them to mean a lot, and that is, we want them to feel exclusive. It's not a watch that you can go into a store and you can buy. You can't just go onto line and buy it now. You need to save up, you need to wait and buy it during that particular window, otherwise you miss out. We've kept that model because exclusivity and that feeling of exclusivity is important to us, and it's really just kind of evolved that way, and that's the way we think we'll stay. So
yeah, so it was purely by accident. It wasn't something that was planned. So it was actually after you launched and after you had the terrible problem of selling out a product.
Yeah, it's a terrible problem.
That's super interesting. So I guess one of the natural responses to that would be, oh crap, we've sold 100,000 products. Let's order some more, and we'll keep kind of doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. But it's really interesting that your kind of strategy followed the brand that you guys push. So it's it's very super interesting how that's turned out. So one of the questions that I have for you is, obviously you guys are doing amazingly well, through social media channels, through the business itself. And a big aspect of that is, as we've touched on, the exclusivity of, only selling products on the 5th of each day on the 5th of each month for 5 days. What are some of the challenges that you have in terms of, or how are you sort of overcoming the issues around scaling that exclusivity as you continue to grow as a company? Sure.
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's one of our challenges. We've just got to stick to our brand vision and our core values, and if it continues to answer that, then it keeps making sense. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise for not knowing anything at the start, because we didn't there was no preconceived ideas about we should do this, we should do that, I've done this before. It was all entirely new, so we had nothing to go on except this vision for the brand and what it stood for. So that was just our guide, and things just worked. And the more we can kind of listen to that, I feel the better off we are. And we are rolling out some other products at the moment, that we'll see kind of come to life throughout kind of 2016. And in there's some new watches, there is some sunglasses, there are some more bags, there's some other collaborative products, which is super exciting. And we're focusing on kind of doing these exclusive partnerships and exclusive products that might be a little bit different to the norm, and trying to kind of offer products that way that are exclusive, that feel exclusive, that look exclusive, and I really do feel like that is a scalable model, and I'm excited to see what happens. But the more I can kind of focus in on that vision and let that kind of guide us, I think we'll be all right.
Great. And for anyone that wants to follow the Fifth story or you, how can they get in touch or kind of stay up to date with the Fifth?
Sure. There's they can join the Fifth fam on our website. We've actually invested a lot into our website to have a section specifically for Fifth fam who want to sign up a little bit more, to get a little bit more. We've got some inspiration boards on our website that people can share content with us, and tell us what they want to see us do. If people like our brand and like what we're about and what we're doing, they can tell us to do something for them, and we'll definitely look into it. So they can sign up to be part of the fam. They can follow us on social. If anybody does want to get in contact, you can do that from our website also. And we've
what are the links and the handles?
Oh, sure. It's the the5th.co is our website, and the Fifth Watches is our main Instagram account, but also the 5th.co Instagram account is our more branded account, and we'll see that come to life a lot more throughout the year as we start to introduce some of these one-off brand collaborations, these limited runs of other products that we're working on, and it's going to be an exciting one to watch. Absolutely.
We'll hopefully get you back in 6 months to a year and kind of see how things are progressing.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
Perfect. Pleasure as always. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thanks for listening to episode 4 of the Startup Playbook podcast. As always, you can find the show notes for my interview with Alex, along with a curated list of tools and resources for startup founders at startupplaybook.co. In the next episode, I interview Paul Naftali, the co-founder of Rampersand Venture Capital, a VC firm that recently closed their second fund, a $50 million fund, which they will be investing in early-stage startups. If you're looking to raise funding or plan to raise funds from investors in the future, make sure you download and listen to my conversation with Paul. Now for the question of the day: what is one thing you would like to improve about your social media strategy, or one platform that you would like to get better at? As always, send through your responses to Snapchat or Instagram, where you can find us at Startup Playbook. On Twitter, the handle is at Playbook Startup, or comment if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you at the next episode.